Portland Public Schools is located within the city of Portland, Oregon, in Multnomah County. As employees of PPS, it is vital that we Portland Public Schools is located within the city of Portland, Oregon, in Monoma County. As employees of PPS, it is vital that we acknowledge that every school building, court, field, stadium, office, and learning space we utilize has taken place on Indigenous land. As such, we honor the tribal people whose way of life, traditions, culture, and in every sense ways of being was taken from them. Acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way of showing respect for those whose land we are on as a step toward correcting the stories and practices, language and art that erase Indigenous people's history and culture toward inviting and honoring the truth and relationships with our Indigenous land, resources, and communities. We want to take a moment to acknowledge the stolen lands on which we meet today from our various locations around the area. This land has been home for thousands of years to the native nations of the Monoma, Kalapuya, Chinook, Clackamas, Molalla, Klamath, Tualatin peoples, among others. Native peoples hunted deer and other animals, fished for salmon and other fish, gathered traditional root and berry foods, traded, lived within traditional spiritual and governmental structures, and more. Boarding schools, tribal termination, racism, and other aspects of colonialism have continued to negatively impact the Native people since that time. We can't undo what was done, but we can honor and acknowledge the descendants of the original peoples of this land, those who have passed, as well as the land itself. Within Portland Public Schools today, we serve students and families representing more than 150 different tribal nations within our educational system. It is our obligation to teach accurate information, both past and present, about the impact of colonialism on our students, all students today, and make visible the multitude of Native families and many more diverse ways of Native communities and families who are living in the present.
What's up? What's up, Portland Public Schools? My name is Dr. Sheldon L. Akins. I'm the host of the Leading Equity Podcast, founder of the Leading Equity Center, and I'm also the author. I was trying to find the book, but I can't find it. It's on my desk somewhere, but my desk is such a mess. But I'm also the author of Leading Equity, Becoming an Advocate for All Students. That book is available as well. Now, I'm excited because I get to present to you all about one of my very favorite games. So today's conversation is The Legend of Zelda, how to defeat the evil Ganon and harness your Triforce of power. Now, no matter what your position is, whether you are a secretary or you are a librarian, whatever your support level is, this is something I think is very important, because when it comes to advocating for ourselves or supporting maybe a parent, family member, community member, students, things like that, it's very important that we recognize that we have power, wisdom, and courage. And I'm going to break all that down for you today in this topic. Now, I'm going to date myself just a little bit, okay? I'm one of those 80s babies, and I remember this game. Now, you might be looking at this cartridge and saying, well, what is this? Now, if you were like me, I had a Nintendo as a young kid, and one of the things I really, really enjoyed was playing this game, because the game Zelda, it revolutionized video games. All right, now here's what I mean. Before Zelda came out, Super Mario Brothers, games like that, you had to play it one time, meaning turn the game on, there was no save, none of that kind of stuff. You legit turn the game on, you play the whole way through. When Zelda came out, however, it revolutionized things because it allowed you to save a profile. So, cool thing about this, and also it was the gold cartridge, right? Most of the Nintendo games were always the gray ones, right? But this one was the gold cartridge, and it allowed you to be able to save. Now, why am I saying this? Well, because even back in these times, it was a way to revolutionize the way that we look at video games and systems. And this really took Nintendo, I would say, arguably, took Nintendo to the next level. Okay, so when you're thinking about what are some things that I can do that may be going against the grain, may not be quote unquote acceptable, or this might be something that isn't with the norm, I want you to recognize that innovation is very important when it comes to strategies, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to our positions, not only in our professional lives, but also in our personal lives as well. Now, if you aren't familiar with Zelda, or if you are needing a refresher, let me tell you a little bit about this game. The concept is there is a group of people. Now, Zelda is the queen, all right, the queen of this land. And what she has is there's this guy named Link, and Link is kind of the warrior, the hero of the show. Not the show, the hero of the game. And the goal is to get this Triforce, okay? Now, the antagonist is this guy, this evil man named Ganon, okay? Now, Ganon and Zelda and Link and the whole land, they're all trying to get this Triforce, which is 3 pieces: power, wisdom, and courage. Now, if you get all 3 of these, you get the Triforce of power. Therefore, you are able to make a wish, and your wish will come true. So that's the whole premise behind the game. So let's see how that can relate to us as educators, as administrators, whatever your position is, your support staff, how this relates. Okay, so let's start with power. Power is the ability to do or act, capability of doing or accomplishing something. I'm going to tell you a little story because I live in Idaho. Yes, I do live in Idaho. I said that. Yes, I do. Never thought I'd end up here, but that's a long story. We don't have enough time to dig into how I ended up here. But when I first moved to Idaho, I started working for the university here, Idaho State University, and I was working in a position for an organization called TRIO. Now, TRIO is a federally funded program that supports students that are interested in going to college. They would be the first ones in their families to pursue a 4-year degree, or maybe they're coming from a limited income background. Now, I was an assistant director, and we had about 17 different high schools that we worked with in these 2 grants that I oversaw. And one of the schools was a tribal school, it was a Native American school. And so I would go every Thursday, I would come to the school and I would work with the students. And that was a school that I personally served to support the kids there, to, help them in their pursuits of going to college. Now, one of the things that I noticed, we would take college tours all the time. And again, 17 different high schools. So we would take groups of 100 kids at a time to these various schools and various higher ed campuses. And the thing that I noticed was my kids, the kids from the reservation, they weren't showing up to these trips. So, I would sign them up. I get the permission slips. I would call them. I remind them every time, hey, okay, trip is next week, or the trip is, the bus will be there tomorrow morning. Show up, kids wouldn't be at the bus stop. So after the trips were over, I would ask them, I say, listen, I talk to you. You say that you're coming. For some reason, the day of, whatever it is, you guys aren't showing up on these trips. You got to talk to me. What's going on? So the student said, all right, here's the problem. We feel more comfortable on the reservations. We rarely leave the reservation unless we have to, or we normally will go in groups and things like that. But the problem that we have is we're usually the last stop when it comes to the bus. And so what happens? We get on the bus, everybody's staring at us. We don't look like the remaining students on the bus. We have to sit in various places, random places. We just feel more comfortable sitting together, but we're trying to find places to sit and we're getting stared at. And in our experiences, we just don't really feel welcomed, right? We go to predominantly white schools and, we're not seeing admission folks. We're not seeing students. We're not seeing professors that look like us. So we just don't really feel like we fit in. And so that's why we don't show up on these trips. So I took this information to my supervisor. I said, boss, this is what the kids are saying. Because the challenge that we have is we're doing these trips and we have 1,500 kids that are represented in all these 17 different high schools, and we're taking about 100 kids at a time on these trips. And I'm signing up anywhere between 6 and 7 kids from the reservation to join us on these trips, and they're not coming. Can we do something specific? They're tribal colleges. Can we take them on a tribal tour where they can see professors, they can learn about various majors that are relatable to them, and they can have an experience that is very unique to them and their experiences? My supervisor said no. She said that is too much time and too much energy and efforts placed on a small group of students. This is where the power piece comes in, because you might be in a position where you personally, you have a supervisor and you want to get your message across. Maybe you are noticing things that your supervisor they're not privy to, because they got 20 different things that they're dealing with on a different level, and you're seeing things more on the ground level, and you want to bring this awareness, bring this attention to them. Now, I could have just let it go. Okay, all right, well, thank you. I tried. But it bothered me, because my thing was, and I said this to my supervisor, I said, here's a challenge that I have. Soon as that grant cycle rolls around, I'm always being told, Sheldon, go back to the reservation, and I need these letters of support. Why? Because we love their stats. It's easy to look at the statistics on the reservation and throw it into the remaining statistics for these other schools that are more affluent, and it balances things out, because they are, based off of statistics, they are the largest group that has the highest need. Right? They have the highest need. But why is it when it comes to supporting the group of folks that have the highest need, we're saying, well, it's too much time and effort and energy on a small population? You love their stats, but we're not providing them the right support, and we're doing them a disservice, in my opinion. Thankfully, my supervisor listened to what I had to say, and she granted the opportunity for us to provide tribal college tours. So I had the opportunity to take my kids to South Dakota. Now, if you're not familiar with geography, like I said, I live in Idaho. It's about a 17-hour drive to South Dakota. Now, keep in mind, this was about, we spent about 3 days on this trip, and we went to various colleges, tribal colleges and institutions of higher education. Man, I took 10 kids, juniors and seniors in high school. And it was great because we culminated our experience at the Crazy Horse Memorial in South Dakota. So here's a picture of the Crazy Horse Memorial. Here's a picture of me and the kids, right? Now, imagine how engaged they were as we go to Oglala Lakota College, as we went to Wind River College. We went to these various places with the students, and how much fun they had seeing and engaging in a community where there was a lot of similar interest. Imagine how important that was. Now, if I had not said anything, I could have let it go. I brought this to my supervisor's attention, but I utilized that power. You know what? I am going to say something, because I recognize that if I don't say anything, we're going to continue to have students that are not being served the way that they need to be served, and they have the most need. Here's something I want you to think about. Leaders instill in their people a hope for success and a belief in themselves. Positive leaders empower people to accomplish their goals. Let's move into wisdom. Wisdom, the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. The quality of being wise. I told you I used to be a school principal. And listen, I tell you one thing, I love leadership. school principal, I have a lot of respect for those who are in those positions. Okay. And if you're someone that supports a school principal, you can understand where I'm coming from. Now, I remember there was a moment where I had a lot going on. All right. I had just had a brand new baby. My son was just born. I was in a process of writing my dissertation. I was also in the process of trying to write a grant for my school. This was a big grant, and I was doing it on my own. Okay. Because I didn't have, I didn't have the support staff that I needed at the time in order to get this done. So I had to kind of do all these things all at once. And I'm not gonna lie, I got to a point where I just felt overwhelmed, and I just felt like, yo, I'm gonna go crazy if I don't figure something out, because it's just too much. Everything's happening all at once. I got all these things, brand new baby, all these things. And I remember I called my father, who's been just a very supportive person, just a big person for wisdom, and just always been there. And I reached out to him. I said, Dad, listen. I believe I probably was crying at the same time. I was just overwhelmed. And I said, Dad, I got all these things going on. And he gave me these words that I live by to this day. He said, son, you will never be caught up. Because that was my whole thing. I was just like, I just need to get caught up. I got this grant due. I got my dissertation chair wants this. Son needs some diapers. I just need to get caught up. My pop said, son, you'll never be caught up. You might be in a position where you get frustrated. You might be like, look, I got 100 emails that I ain't even opened yet. These aren't just spam emails. These are legit emails that I need to respond to immediately. You might be in a position where I need to provide this support, or I need to get these books ready. I need to get this prepared. I need to do this. I need to do that. I just need to get caught up. I tell you this, you will never be caught up. He said, Sheldon, break this down, right? Prioritize better. You need to look at your task, take the stuff that needs to happen right away, knock those out, work on this other strategy, put this together, put this piece together, but you will never be caught up. There will always be more work to do. What happens when you clean out your email address, your email account? Clean your inbox off and you look at it. Oh, I'm accomplished. I got all my emails done. Or I made all my phone calls. And then what happens? An hour later, you look in your inbox, there's 10 more emails. You'll never be caught up. There's always more work to do. Prioritize. Use that wisdom, right? Use that wisdom. Okay, what needs to happen now? I'm one of those people, personally, what I do when I go to work, right? I have, I usually write about 5 tasks down on my paper, and I'm old school, right? So I still keep my journal, right? This is where I keep all my notes and everything right here. And so as a result, I write them down and I circle the things that has to happen today. It cannot go like, you have to do this today, Sheldon. I circle those things. And that might be 2 tasks out of those 5. The other 3, if I don't get to it today, I don't get to it today. It's not the end of the world, but these 2 need to happen. And as I accomplish a task, I cross it out. But you'll never be caught up. Let's talk about courage. Courage, mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. Going back to my school principal days, I had a student. Now, I was a principal, so I've been a principal in 2 schools, and this is the second school I was at. I was in Oregon, and just imagine the demographics out in Oregon. And I was in Portland. Okay, I was in Eugene area, Springfield to be exact. Okay, so you know what it's like out there, and so as a principal in Eugene, I stood out, right, because there wasn't a lot of black principals out there, and let alone staff and educators. Okay, so I'm at the school and I had a black family come and they said, look, oh, we're excited because we heard that there was a black principal here. We want to put our son here. He's going to be in kindergarten. And they said, promise us that he will be okay. I said, oh, absolutely. He will be safe. He'll be okay. I will take care of him. I will look out for him. So they enrolled their kid into the school and wasn't long, about a month in, got word that there was a kid that was in first grade that was bullying the young boy. They were calling, he was calling him Chocolate Boy. Hey, Chocolate Boy. I didn't know what to do when I got word about this. I didn't know what to do because, again, black man in Eugene, principal. I was like, if I go too hard or if I don't go hard enough, should this kid be expelled? What do I do? I didn't know what. I didn't have a decision. So it happened on a Friday. And I said, I'm going to spend the weekend. I'm going to figure this out. Go home, spend the weekend. I didn't do anything else beyond that, but just try to figure out what to do next. Because again, there was a lot happening for me. Again, my identity, my background, and again, how do I handle this in a way that, quote unquote, proves myself to be a fair when it comes to leadership. Show up Monday morning. There's a voice message on my phone. I check it. It says, and it's from the parents of the boy. And they said, we're disappointed. We heard that our boy has been teased. You promised us that he would be safe, and you did nothing. That hit me very hard because I didn't do anything. And I felt really bad because I promised this family, I said, he's going to be safe. I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to look after him. And I didn't do anything about it. The least I could have done was I could have given that family a call that Friday and said, hey, this is the situation. I just want you to know that I'm aware of it. I'm going to handle it. I'm taking care of it. But I did nothing. That moment right there, and this happened 9 years ago easily. I still think about that moment, that mistake that I made. Not having the courage that I should have had, especially in a leadership position. And I promised myself that day, that moment, that it would never happen again. Maybe you are an individual who has missed opportunities as well, right? And I speak to you as a human being who is fallible, who's made mistakes, and who has missed other opportunities. This is not the one time, right? I've made mistakes, right? We don't always know what to do in a lot of situations. We're not always ready or prepared for situations as they come up, as they arise. One of the things I try to tell folks is when you miss opportunities, when you miss these experiences, these kind of things happen, and again, catches us off guard. Don't beat yourself up. Use those as learning experiences, as learning moments, and promise yourself never again. Right? That has been my mantra. With that being said, Nelson Mandela says history will judge us by the difference we make in the everyday lives of children. Okay. When it comes to courage, one of the big pieces of courage is we need to have confidence. When you are dealing with going into meetings, prepare yourself, right? I need to bring this attention to my supervisor. I need to let a parent know these things, right? And so be prepared. Now, one time when I got my doctorate, I figured, you get your doctorate, move into higher education. That's what I thought, right? So that was the goal of mine. So I started applying for jobs, and I put in for a job at a school, and I got an interview at a community college in the Chicago area. Flew out to Chicago, go to this interview prepared. I was qualified for the position. But the problem is I had a wardrobe malfunction. Okay. My zipper on my pants broke. And so as I am walking into this interview, my zipper is broken And honestly, all I could think about the whole entire time as I am sitting through and standing around during this interview was how I'm exposed. And not exposed in a good way. You know what I'm saying? So as a result, I bombed that interview. And I was qualified. I had all the boom, 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 all the checks, everything that they wanted in this position. I had it. But mentally, I wasn't there. I didn't have the confidence that I needed. Of course, I didn't get the job. But here's the thing. When we're talking about confidence, we're talking about courage. We're not alone, right? 70% of people admit to regularly lacking confidence in themselves when it comes to their careers and speaking up at work. So even if you are an individual saying, well, I'm just a paraprofessional, or I'm just a librarian, I'm just a lunch worker, I'm just this, I'm just that, I'm brand new to the school. I'm not an OG. I'm not one of those individuals who's been, I'm not a veteran. I'm brand new. Whatever your position is, just know you're not alone when it comes to confidence. And I challenge you to have that courage. Here's the thing. We don't develop courage by being happy every day. We develop it by surviving difficult times and challenging adversity. Okay? Challenging adversity. So you might be saying, all right, Sheldon, all right, you told us some stories, great, blah, 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 blah. All right, cool. But I need strategies. How do I do this? How do I talk to my supervisor? How do I talk to my boss? How do I talk to my best friend? How do I talk to maybe a partner at home? How do I have these conversations? Because, if I want to intervene, if I want to use my power, wisdom, and courage, I need some skills. Well, I got you. All right. I'm going to give you some strategies on what we can do, and we'll wrap things up. There's three methods that I like to present to you as a way to harness that power. First one is to ask for more clarification. Simple questions such as, hey, could you share with me what you meant when you said X? I'm trying to learn a little bit more. And I'll give you an example. Again, I'm a black man living in Idaho. And I remember one time I walked into a store. This was during Christmas time. Salvation Army had their little, they had a volunteer out there. He was dressed up as Santa Claus, ringing the bell. And I'm walking into the store, and the man says, where are you from? And I said, well, I live here in Idaho. And he says, you don't look like you're from here. So I said, oh, well, what does an Idahoan look like? What should I look like? Should I have potatoes on my back? What should I look like? Tell me a little bit more. What made you ask me that question? So this is an opportunity. So I'm not blaming him or anything. I'm not coming at him wrong. I don't think I'm coming at him wrong or any of those kind of things. It's just more of, I'm trying to figure out how you got there. So that was an opportunity for him to kind of, So that's one way, right? When we're trying to intervene, we can ask for clarification. Could you tell me, what made you say that? Or I'm just curious, what brought you there? Now you can engage in conversation. Another way is to separate intent from impact. Because again, we're just going to assume that everybody has, best intentions. Folks aren't saying things or doing things intentionally. We're not trying to harm people. But there's also the intent versus the impact. Okay, I didn't intend to hurt anybody's feelings, but it did have this sort of impact. Right? So you could say something simple as, I know you didn't realize this, or I know you didn't mean anything by this when you said blah, blah, blah. However, it's offensive, and here's why. Sometimes we tell people, oh, don't say anything, or don't talk to somebody that way. And that's not what we do here. We don't give them a why. I remember when I was a kid, I remember getting in trouble one time. I didn't know. I honestly didn't know I was utilizing a racial slur. The school I went to had predominantly Asian students. and they would utilize certain terms and describe themselves. And it was very common. I would hear certain terms or used to refer to them. And I honestly, a ninth grader, I did not know that they were racial slurs. Had no clue. So one time I was talking to my best friend, and we were in the car together, and my dad was driving, and I said one of the words, and my dad pulled over the car so quickly and started yelling at, "Oh, don't you ever say that, and how dare you utilize the racial slur? That's not the right way." And he never told me why. I did not know it was a racial slur. He didn't even say racial slur. He just, "How dare you say that?" And he never gave me the why. That conversation probably could have gone a little different if we had been in a situation where it's like, "I know you didn't mean anything by it when you said X. However, it's an offensive word. It's harmful. And here's why. That's actually a racial slur. Did you know that?" Okay. The last one is to share your own process. This is to share your own story. Start with your own vulnerability. And this is something I utilize a lot because, again, all three of these strategies are strategies that you can intervene, that you can bring up something to someone's attention without blaming. Because what happens when you start blaming people and all these things, they get defensive and the conversations don't go anywhere. Share your own process. Hey, you know what? The other day, I was watching you talk to the student. And it just kind of reminded me of when I first started working at the school, and I had a situation where a parent or a student said something to me, and this is how I responded. I'm just curious. Can we talk about that? See, you started with your own vulnerability. You shared your own experience, your own story first. Again, you're not blaming. You're just saying, you know what? I noticed something that you said, or I noticed something that you did, and it reminded me of something that I did. Can we talk about it? Any of these strategies, I think, are important to utilize, and they can be very helpful for you as you are in your positions. Here's the thing I want you to remember. And again, I've shared I've shared some of my own personal stories, and I've been vulnerable with you, right? I've shared, I've missed opportunities, I made mistakes. I didn't always have the power that I should have had or use my power. I didn't always have the wisdom, and I didn't always have the courage. Okay. But at the end of the day, you have the power to change lives. Okay. So just to sum it up, in whatever position you have, whatever position you hold, you have the power, you have the wisdom, and I want you to use that courage. Okay. We can be strong as we're going into the school year coming up. Folks need you. Your position is very powerful and important. Without you, school doesn't run the way it's supposed to. Keep that in mind. If you see something, if you hear something, if you're made aware of something, make sure that we use that Triforce in order to support our students, because ultimately our kids are the ones who benefit. That is all that I have for today, for today's topic. I will be doing a presentation as well on implicit bias, so I hope that you can join me for that session as well. But feel free to connect with me, either social media, or you shoot me an email if you have any questions. Remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But by all means, keep moving. Let's continue to be a voice in leading equity.